I'll just go right ahead and say it. You can learn Japanese with anime. What's more, it's a pretty good way to do it. If you use the right tools. That's right, weebs, I'm about to make your anime dreams come true. Now, obviously, you can't just sit there and watch anime and expect to become fluent. Oh! Better luck next time, weebs. So let me just get this out of the way. You're never going to learn Japanese without putting in the work. That said, this doesn't mean there aren't ways to make this work more interesting and more relevant to those of, say, the weeaboo affectation. Let me introduce my new favorite study tool, Koohi.cafe. What it basically is a library of vocabulary flashcards pulled from anime, visual novels, and books. You might be like, snore, flashcards, but this is revolutionary for one simple reason. Context. Your biggest hurdle in learning new words is understanding the context in which they're used. But if you can place it within something you know, not only will you understand the meaning a lot more, it'll be way easier for you to remember. You can probably see where I'm going with this. So I'm about 2.5 years into studying Japanese, and I'm at the point where I can express basically most things I want. But a little while ago, I ran into this wall where I had difficulty picking up new words because I wasn't getting this context. And that's when I discovered Koohi.cafe. I started with the vocabulary for Violet Evergarden, and this was immediately helpful because the words are arranged in the order they appear in the story. Just by adding words to my study list, I was able to follow where we were in the story and improve my Japanese before even starting. Here's the part where she wakes up in the hospital. Here she's meeting Lieutenant Hodgins. Here they're at the postal company. Here's where they meet the astronomers. Because the words are presented in the order they appear, and because I know the story, context came naturally to basically every single word I was presented with. So let me walk you through how Koohi.cafe works. First, you'll open the library and you'll be presented with a list of titles to study from, or you can use the search function on the right. So let's say I want to read Kimi no Nawa. When you open it, you'll be presented with a summary of how difficult it is, how many unique words are in there, and how many words you've already marked as known. You can then choose what words to study based on their frequency and Wanikani level, more on this later, and then it'll start feeding you vocabulary to add to your study list. So this brings us to the all-important question. Why would you be using anime to study Japanese like the degenerate weeaboo you are instead of normie shit? Obviously I did just answer my own question, step on the like button you degenerate weeaboo, and if you missed it, watch part 1 on why you should be using anime to study Japanese. But for this, let me tell you about how I taught myself piano. I took lessons as a kid but literally hadn't played in like 15 years, so I was just starting with the ability to read sheet music, and yet I surpassed where I was at 10 years old in about 2 months. Why? It's simple, I enjoyed doing it. I got to play bangers from Final Fantasy and Homestuck instead of the normie garbage my piano teachers kept giving me as a child. After learning enough songs, I was able to basically just play piano. Would it have been faster and more efficient if I'd studied scales and music theory? Yes. Would I have practiced as much or have gotten nearly as far? Absolutely fucking not, because fuck that shit. This isn't to say it was easy, because it wasn't. I labored over the piano every single day, sometimes for hours, but I loved every second of it. Of course, learning to play piano is a little different than learning to speak Japanese. For piano, you need to know like 7 notes and 5 symbols. That's not a lot. Whereas for Japanese, here. This is a joke. This is a real kanji, but you don't actually need to know this. Anyway, in principle, this is exactly the same thing. If you learn enough words, eventually you're going to have a working vocabulary. A couple caveats. First, the book selection. Since the dude running this has to input every book himself with a text crawler, there are a relatively limited number of titles here. That said, you can pay him to add presumably any anime, game, or book you can find. I was trying to do this with Violet Evergarden, which I've been reading right now, until I realized, they literally didn't make an ebook version of this. So I've been making use of the site's dictionary function to add words manually myself. Oh, this is upside down. Also note that manga don't play especially well with text scrolling software, so any manga you see have been transcribed manually by presumably insane people with too much time on their hands, he says as he inputs vocabulary manually from Violet Evergarden. Next, you may want to think practically about what book you're studying. Like, maybe don't start with the one about the letter-writing child soldier with robot arms who only speaks in Turbo Keigo. It's a little literary. Like, do you know how many kanji I now know that I'll literally never see anywhere else? Like, remember that difficulty scale though? Like, did you know there's only about 1,000 words in a silent voice? pretty manageable, right? So this brings us to what I don't like about this tool, although keep in mind, this is made by one dude for free in his spare time, so you can't complain too much, but this is what I'd like to see improved in the future, assuming he ever watches this, is what I would say, but I talked to the dude when I was trying to get him to add Violet Evergarden to the site, and not only is he a super chill dude, but he addressed basically every single issue I had. First, this is by nature a supplementary tool, so there's an option to import any words you already know, which is very useful if you use any other flashcard application. For me, for example, in class, I was using Genki and Mina no Nihongo, so obviously I wanted to import all the vocabulary from those. A fantastic feature, but for me, it literally wasn't working, so if you ran into the same issues I did, here's how to fix them. First, get your list. For an Enki deck, you're literally just going to right-click and export all of the vocabulary as a TXT file. Then just open it up and copy and paste it into Koohi. Make sure to input what column it's going to take data from, and then also make sure there isn't a blank line at the very end, because that's completely going to break it. Haha, coding, am I right? Would be really funny if I was gonna go on a huge rant because this kind of fucking broke it. Anyway, this page is a complete mess, but again, it is one dude building it for free in his spare time. The other main issue I had is it doesn't automatically feed you vocabulary. You have to go in there and manually select vocabulary yourself, and then it'll quiz you on them, and then it'll get added to your study list. I don't know why there isn't a button that'll just feed you vocabulary, because presumably, if I've added a word to my study list, I want to study it. So why there is this extra step of manually going in there and selecting words is beyond me. Apparently though, there used to be a button that would just feed you the next X number of vocabulary. I have no idea why he would have taken it away, but he says he's adding it back. The last little nitpick I had is it'd be nice to be able to separate vocabulary since, you know, something with Violet Evergarden, there's a lot of unique kanji and words that I would literally never see anywhere else. This is a pretty minor nitpick since technically, you know, words are words, and I have no idea how long this would take to implement, but apparently he is working on this, so there you go. So you might have noticed the other main problem with this might be kind of difficult if you don't know how to read kanji. Luckily for you weebs though, I have a review of the greatest kanji study tool ever made, Wanikani. So all of this is to say, no, you're not gonna learn Japanese without putting in the work, but if you're the kind of person who's willing to do that just to watch anime without subtitles, or in my case, read really old pornographic visual novels that will never get translated into English, this might really work for you, and it's free. So this is part 2 of my 3-part series on learning Japanese with anime. No, I lied! There will be more than 3 parts. If you missed part 1 on why you should be using anime to learn Japanese, you can find it right here. And presumably if you're watching this from the space robot-filled future, so should part 3 on choosing what anime to watch, and part 4 on true immersion. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, friends, and I will see you in the next video.